Welcome back to Health Huddle. Today we're having the distinct honor of speaking with a true pioneer in the fight against cancer. Joining us is Dr. Daniel L. Flynn from the Executive Vice President, Chief Scientific Officer, and founder of Decipher Pharmaceuticals. With over 38 years of experience in the pharmaceutical and biotechnology industry, Dr. Flynn's vision led to the creation of Decipher in 2003, a company dedicated to impacting the lives of people with cancer by tackling the core mechanics of tumor and drug resistance. Before founding Decipher, Dr. Flynn held significant leadership roles at companies like Millennium Pharmaceuticals, Amgen, and Monsanto. He also held the holds the esteemed position of adjunct professor of medicinal chemistry at University of Kansas Lawrence and has served as the national chair for the Division of Medicinal Chemistry of the American Chemical Society. Dr. Flynn, thank you for joining us today. We're eager to dwell more into your journey and the groundbreaking work done at Decipher, particularly in the realm of cancer research and its potential for prevention. So the first set of questions that I want to talk to you is more so about your journey. And the first question is, your career spans nearly 4 decades in the pharmaceutical and biotechnology sectors, accumulating in the founding of Decipher. Could you share what sparked your initial interest in cancer research and what pivotal moments led to you to establish Decipher Pharmaceuticals?
Okay, well, first of all, thanks, Jamal, for taking the time to chat with me. And I hope to be able to provide some insights into at least what I've been doing over the last 35 years or so in cancer research. Regarding the founding of Decipher Pharmaceuticals, which was obviously a big pivot for me, first of all, I should say that I wasn't groomed to be an entrepreneur. I don't have an MBA, but in 2001, an opportunity arose that I just could not turn down. And if you roll back to 2001, well, first I think I was 48 years old. So, mid career type of professional. And that's when the Human Genome Project was published. So many organizations, the National Institute of Health, and other agencies pooled the resources together to actually sequence the entire human genome. And I was reading those papers, and something jumped out at me, and that was that it seemed like a class of genes that code for kinases seemed to be involved in a lot of cancer and related diseases. So as it turns out, the Human Genome Project uncovered that a person has 520 kinases in each cell. And what they do is they basically orchestrate everything a cell does. And these kinases form like think of them as a circuit board.
Okay.
And these kinases, they have relays and circuits, and kinase 1 will activate kinase 2, they'll activate kinase 3, and they spread and they diverge, they have feedback mechanisms, but the whole thing is under tight control. And I thought, wow, that's just kind of interesting. If I were going to go into cancer with something new, what would I do? And so I dug a little deeper on these protein kinases. Um, what what really caught my attention was that when I started to map where in the gene sequence these mutations were in these kinases, and these kinases are enzymes, right? So the mutations tended to always kind of congregate in the central core of the protein enzyme. And the mutations would be almost kind of in a small area. Uh, we focused on that. We thought, well, what's going on there? And as it turns out, without giving you the blow by blow, uh, uh, all of these kinases, they have to be under tight control. And they're under tight control by these nano switches that are in the interior of them. And they're almost like a switch. I mean, they are a switch. And so these molecular switches, on the one hand, can turn one direction and turn the kinase to an off shape. When the kinase needs to become activated and signal, it will actually flex to an on state signal, and then it's supposed to turn off. And all of that is orchestrated by these little interior switches that toggle the movement of the kinase from one form to another. And what struck me was that many of the mutations that we were finding that were causative of cancer were right in this switch region. Uh, so that was one revelation. And then that's, like necessary but not sufficient, right? So the next question was, could I make a drug discovery therapeutics platform out of that? And the answer was yes. So now, looking 20 years later, we have mapped most kinases. We've found that kinases have one of 8 different types of switches. And we use a lot of X ray crystallography to take molecular atomic pictures of these kinase switches and then design small molecule drugs to go in there, bind to those switches, and turn them off. So that's sort of been a nutshell in the journey I took. And it's all of this started by reading again the output from the publication of the Human Genome Project.
So it all started from the Human Genome Project. You just educated me as well. So the next question I have for you. So Decipher's mission focuses on addressing key mechanisms of tumor and drug resistance. What inspired this specific focus? And what unmet needs in cancer therapy do you see as the most critical to address?
Yeah, well, again, it kind of comes back to these nano switches that were in these kinases. Um, Kinase enzymes have been known for 50 years, and pharmaceutical companies have been making inhibitors to block kinases. But uh, the first and second generation kinase inhibitors were not very sturdy. Um, they were binding in a different classical way. They weren't trying to control and manipulate the switches. They were just binding to a different pocket that existed on the kinases. So what what got us stirring more is that if we were to able to target these broken switches, we could get at the molecular heart of cancer. I mean, cancers are not all cancers are driven by kinase mutations, but we found that over 50 cancers are.
Okay.
And it was a very significant number of cancers that are driven by these kinase switch mutations. And so, um, I mean, for me, it was a matter of moving the whole field forward by cataloging and building a lexicon of what these switches are, and then one by one tailoring small molecule drugs. These would be oral pills, not injections, oral pills that the patients could take on an outpatient basis on a daily basis to treat the molecular cause of their cancer.
So the root cause. All right, so let's lead into Decipher's approach to cancer research and prevention. And question one, while Decipher's current focus is on improving existing therapies, what role does basic research into the fundamental mechanisms of cancer play in the potential for future cancer prevention strategies?
Okay, so I took the liberty of saying Decipher was not focusing on improving existing therapies. Well, only because we were going to take a completely different tactic.
Okay.
We were going to go after these broken switch regions in these kinases and get to the molecular heart of the issue. So we thought that was novel, and so that's what we've done. Um, the other thing I wanted to mention now, I don't think I completely answered your previous question, but one of your questions before is where are these unmet medical needs and where can we bring the kinase switch technology of Decipher to meet various forms of what I would call cancer prevention. So I thought I would define some different aspects of cancer prevention. Um, First of all, you'd like to actually prevent cancer from even initiating, right? So that's that you can say that's way upstream. Kind of keep that cancer from initiating. And there are kinases that have broken switches that actually do cause the cancer. So we call these tumor driver kinases. They actually drive the transformation that leads to cancer. So some of our programs address some of these early on cancer prevention uh, uh, kinases by targeting those. So those are the tumor drivers. Um, there's another sense of cancer prevention, and that is the prevention of resistance. I mean, how many times have you heard where a patient's on therapy, it works for 4 weeks or maybe 3 months, 5 months, and then it doesn't work.
Yeah.
And this is this ugly head of cancer resistance. It seems like these cancer cells have minds of their own. They know how to dodge whatever you're giving them. And part of what we do in our switch control approach to kinase inhibition is we bind in such a way so that the kinase can't mutate itself into resistance. And that's been one of the big features of our platform is to be able to, once we inhibit a kinase, we're pretty sure that that kinase is not going to be able to, we're going to prevent mutational resistance. So that's a second form of prevention, if you will. A third area of prevention, it has to do with some kinases that they don't cause the cancer. They don't cause the cancer, but once a cancer forms, these are kinases of what we call adaptive stress response. They don't cause the cancer, but what they do is they upregulate signals in the cell to enable it to deal with the stress of high energy needs and nutrient requirements that a cancer cell has that's unique compared to a normal cell. And these are very important. And so another form of prevention that we have is to prevent cancers from initiating these adaptive stress responses. And we've demonstrated in some cases these adaptive stress response kinases, if we knock those down, the cancer cell dies because it cannot deal with the stress any longer. So we want to prevent that too. So I'm unpacking prevention for you. And then a final one is metastasis. So I think it's with maybe some exceptions. Uh, Cancer patients don't die of a primary tumor.
It's like the secondary.
It's a secondary, tertiary. I mean, uh, uh, most of the time when a person even finds out they have cancer and it's diagnosed by either a primary care physician or a tertiary oncology site, these cancers have metastasized, and so preventing metastasis is another big thing that we're interested in. And so you might have a primary tumor. It maybe even has metastasized locally, but we would like it to keep from spreading systemically so that patients aren't riddled with cancer throughout their entire bodies. And that's what really causes the fatalities.
Yeah, especially like I've always been told how like if cancer ever gets to like your lungs, that's like end game.
Well, right. I mean, breast cancer, take that.
Yeah.
Breast cancer, it metastasizes to the bone, it metastasizes to the brain. Colon cancer metastasizes to the liver, the pancreas, and the lungs. Prostate cancer metastasizes to the bones. So and then once you start getting multi-system engagement of the cancer, I mean, it's almost game over. I mean, now you're getting down to maybe extending the life of a patient for a, a small amount of time and treating them palliatively so that they're not in too much pain. But in all of these forms of what I would call cancer prevention, you know, inhibiting the tumor drivers to begin with, inhibiting mutational resistance, preventing these adaptive stress response pathways, and preventing metastasis. That's sort of a whole systems approach that Cypher has for what we call cancer prevention. And one of our mantras is, I'm not interested in extending a cancer patient's life by 3 weeks or 4 weeks. I mean, I'm not belittling that, but our mission is to extend a cancer patient life by years. That's what we want to do.
Have you been able to?
Yes. So, maybe I think you were kidding. Anyway, I'm going to unpack those 5 areas So my definition of, I just want to say that because, my definition of prevention might be different than some other people's definition of prevention. So there are many, many different, even downstream of the cancer initiation, there are many ways of intercepting the cancer to prevent it from, in the end game, destroying the patient.
So, like your definition of prevention is more of on the scientific side, whereas my definition of prevention is more of on the health side that the individual could potentially do, but you want to prevent it before it could even start in a person's body.
Yeah. Well, I want to bring wellness into the picture here too. But yeah, I mean, what we're doing in terms of our technology as a biotech company is we can prevent cancer initiation by blocking the tumor driver kinases. We can prevent tumor resistance to therapy. We can prevent the adaptive stress response. And then finally, we can actually prevent metastasis by taking different approaches using the switch control kinase inhibition platform. But all the way around, it's very clear to me too that you know drugs don't do everything. There's a whole mind body axis, and it's and maybe it's mind, body, and soul. But a person's physical health, their metabolic health, their emotional health, the state of their immune system, which you can improve upon by wellness strategies. All of that's important. I agree. I mean, it's not either or for me. It's both.
So I want to get into, since we talked about the prevention and all of that. So what would you say is Decipher's pipeline of drug candidates? Are there any areas of research that hold particular promise for potentially intercepting the development of cancer in high risk individuals?
Well, yes. Yeah, I think I bit. Oh, well, I had that question right in front of me, so I knew you were going to ask it. But so regarding the prevention or the initiation of the cancer, Decipher has had several programs, and I'm just going to give you acronyms. They don't mean anything. That's just what these kinases are called.
Okay.
Um, but there's a kinase called KIT, KIT, which is responsible for the initiation of gastrointestinal stromal tumors. And we have a drug that blocks that. It's actually marketed now under the brand name of Kinlock. We have a program targeting MET kinase, which is a cancer-causing kinase of a large percentage of lung cancer. We have an inhibitor of a kinase called CSF1R. You're going to remember this, right? But so CSF1R actually is causative of joint cancers.
Okay.
And that's our second marketed drug called Rombimza, which is not yet. It's the drug is not marketed for the treatment of those patients, and it actually it blocks the initiation, um, but it also keeps the cancer at bay as well. And then lastly, we have a program targeting RAF kinase. And RAF kinases are causative of a number of different cancers, including colon cancer and pancreatic cancer. So yes, we do have these programs where we're trying to target the kinase that is causing. It's a tumor driver is causing the cancer initiation. We have 2 programs for this adaptive stress response that I mentioned. Again, these don't cause the cancer, but once a cancer starts and it starts to grow, it has a lot of nutrient, oxygen, and vascularization needs in order to keep doing what it's doing. And so we have 2 programs that target these adaptive stress response pathways. We have an ULK inhibitor, which blocks a process called autophagy. We have an inhibitor to GCN2 kinase that's all of these are in the clinic that blocks GCN2, which is an integrated stress response pathway. So both of these programs, they're not the tumor driver, but what they do is they set up a circuitry that enables the cancers to deal with all the stress they're under. And if you take those legs out from under the cancer, we can send those cancers into apoptosis and cause them to die. And then lastly, since you asked, um, we really do care about cancer metastasis, very much so. And in a minute, we'll talk about that maybe in more detail, but um, we had covered a kinase called Tie2, and so Tie2 gets activated in the vasculature of the blood vessels surrounding the tumor. And Tie2 sets up these little doorways on the blood vessels, and then it will shuttle tumor cells through that opening door into the bloodstream. And then at remote metastatic sites, it opens the doors again and lets the tumor go back into a different tissue to set up a metastatic site. And Tie2 inhibitors, this drug is called robatinib, very potently knocks down that process. And right now, it has been looked at in breast cancer primarily to this point.
All right, so how does Decipher leverage its understanding of tumor biology and drug resistance to identify novel therapeutic targets that could potentially be used in preventative interventions down the line?
Yeah. So the ones I just mentioned. So our our KIT inhibitor that I mentioned before, that inhibits the tumor drug, it was a first in class inhibitor that could handle all of the 40 different KIT mutations that exist. That was a first in class drug. Um, our OLK inhibitor and our GCN2 inhibitor for the adaptive stress response, we were the first ones in the world that I know of to go into the clinic to treat these mechanisms. Um, we have what's called a RAF inhibitor program that is a first in class approach to blocking um, signaling there's three different RAF forms, and our drug is able to block all three of those forms, which is another first in class agent. And then CSF1R to treat these joint cancers, it's also a first in class drug. So we're not making Me Too drugs. I mean, and that's actually part of the risk we have to absorb, right? It's easier to make a Me Too drug because others have outlined the pathway of how you conduct a clinical trial, what you need to beat to be approved. And, the playbook is already there. When you're first in class, you have to, look over the horizon and prospectively design what attributes of the drug you think you're going to need, and then what kind of a clinical trial protocol are you going to put into place. So it's higher risk, but the reward, I think, is worth it because you were able to go out with novel treatments to be first in class treatment paradigms for patients who otherwise would not be getting the drugs.
So you're setting a new standard.
We're setting that we really are not making, we're not interested in improving somebody else's drug by making a slight modification. We're interested in innovating new drugs for taking into the clinic and the marketplace. Yeah.
All right, so let's get on the topic of cancer prevention, but from a broader landscape. So, beyond pharmaceutical interventions, what role do you believe lifestyle factors, early detection, and personalized medicine play in a comprehensive approach to cancer prevention?
Yeah, I get. I'm going to steer this a certain way,
Okay.
Jamal. Uh, it's kind of interesting. So I think I'm going to address the interface with wellness that is important to you. Before I get there, it's just not. So it's not enough that we have. Well, at least in the therapy business, it's not enough that we have the drugs. We need to have improved governmental, regulatory, and insurance company payer systems in place. And the reason that's important, I mean, maybe people do know this, but despite all of this novel technology, um, insurance companies won't pay for some of this stuff that could be useful, very powerful, even for intercepting cancer initiation in patients. I'll give you a good example. For the at least 20, well, okay, I'll back off, maybe not 20 years, yes, but certainly within the last 10 years, um, there is a blood test. All you have to do is go into your doctor, take a little bit of blood, and send it off to one of about 6 different companies, and they will perform what's called ctDNA. That's circulating tumor DNA. So these are all tumors, even when they're small and getting started, they will slough off uh, DNA fragments into their bloodstream, and they're detectable. And now they're really detectable at very, very low levels. But if you wanted to go in and see if you had any form of, if you were at risk and had even the slightest circulating tumor DNA, insurance companies wouldn't cover it. That, to me, that some kind of doesn't make sense. Wouldn't you rather spend a few dollars? Because wouldn't you really rather treat cancer at its inception rather than wait till somebody's stage 4 metastatic?
It's like preventative medicine isn't really preventative because, oh, you have to have something actually happen before we can even.
That's right. So the whole system is. I'm not belittling the FDA. Or there's another organization called the National Comprehensive Cancer Network, the NCCN. And yes, I understand you have to have regulatory guidelines in place. And I'm not here to cast aspersion on the FDA or the NCCN, maybe a little bit of dispersion on insurance companies. But it just seems like no matter what the industry tries to do by bringing cancer prevention to the forefront, we're running into regulatory roadblocks and certainly insurance company roadblocks. Because right now, this blood test to detect very, very, very early cancer, uh, you know, most people aren't going to be able to afford it because the insurance companies are going to deny it, are not going to cover it. There's another interesting insight here is, um, so I have taken this blood test. I don't have cancer yet, um, but even within my own family, I've tried to encourage this, but members of my family would say, "I don't want to know." It's amazing how emotional people can be. If you're talking to a loved one or a friend and you try to encourage them to take this very early blood test and prevent the cancer from really getting started, um, I have, about half of my family, extended family and friends, they'll say, "Well, I feel well. I don't want to know." And uh, it's an emotional stress for them to even think about going in and getting a blood test to see if they do have a certain cancer. So that I don't know how to deal with that other than say, well, you know, when do you want to know?
No, I relate with that because, like, as you know, I have my health coaching company, and I push the importance of exercise more from disease prevention, disease management, and even lifestyle changes. But it's I don't want to make that change, but you much rather wait till something actually happens, or you have a heart attack and the doctor says, "Hey, we need to actually start." So why not be preventative now? And I like to use the analogy: exercise is just like routine maintenance on your body, like you would do routine maintenance on your vehicle. So
Yeah. So I do believe that, beyond my career has been in pharmaceutical interventions, but I also am a practitioner, hopefully myself. I understand the importance of healthy eating, minimizing processed foods, watching the, the refined sugar intake, regular sleep cycles. I'm finding that I used to not sleep much when I was younger. Now I need to sleep more. But on the other hand, I think important sleep cycles are important. Uh, Avoiding UV radiation, and some of these foods we eat, we don't know. Some of the junk we eat could actually set up what's called reactive oxygen species, or maybe they're called ROS. Maybe you've heard of reactive oxygen species, but a lot of the inferior foods that we eat actually enable the buildup of these are oxygen radicals that do damage to DNA inside of cells and can actually initiate a mutation in a gene that would cause cancer. So, for instance, incorporating antioxidants into your diet, you know, green leafy vegetables, spinach, and others that have natural antioxidants in them. I'm a big believer in that too. And just emotional health too. And people can take whatever approach they want to for emotional health, whether it be faith based or yoga or some sort of meditation. Because I really do believe in the mind body connection.
I do too. Uh, we don't know, like, people don't understand the true importance of mind, body, and just like de-stressing. Like for me, I exercise at the end of the day because it's me letting all the worries of the day go and just I notice when I exercise at night right before bed, I sleep better.
Right.
I wake up feeling a lot better. But I want to lead into question two. And as an expert in medicinal chemistry, what are some of the key challenges in developing pharmaceutical agents specifically for cancer prevention in healthy individuals or those at risk?
I'm thinking. Well, I mentioned the regulatory issues that kind of keep some of this from happening. Um, in the area of oncology, I would love for insurance companies to cover very early detection. And so I think I understand there's a prevention's a gradient for me. So there's maybe your definition of prevention is I don't want any evidence of any cancer, period. And for me, that's the first line of attack, right? But you're not going to make it all day. You're not going to. That's not
Not the case.
that's idealist.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that second barrier to keep, I want to treat cancer patients. If they do get cancer, I want to treat them early. I don't want them to find out that they got metastatic stage 4 disease. So, for me, it's like awareness so that, I'm sure it touches every family. We've got a friend in Lawrence right now. Last year she found out, hey, I've got stage 4 ovarian cancer. She had no idea. She had no idea. And so, I would really like as a society for us to be able to reverse that. So you can diagnose early, treat early, treat early. Primary tumors are, are more readily silenced than trying to treat something that's metastasized to the entire body. I was going to segue into this. And so there are some other, outside of, um, outside of oncology, I'm on the board of a few other biotechs that they don't work in cancer, but they work in other areas. And so some advances I'm seeing that are like now we're talking curative. So the next best thing to prevention is curative, and by curative we mean that it's whatever that is gone. It's gone, and that's not coming back. So that would be right after absolute prevention. If you have something that is curative and reverses the disease so that it does not come back, that would be welcome too. And I'm thinking of there are about 5 companies out there right now that have cell-based therapies that absolutely reverse and stop a whole variety of autoimmune diseases. It's an approach. I won't go into the technical details, but this approach is targeting lupus, multiple sclerosis, myasthenia gravis, rheumatoid arthritis. I mean, just think of the morbidity and mortality of all those diseases. And we're on the cusp of providing, I think, the world cures for these diseases. And I'm sure you would follow the GLP-1 drugs.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
So, I mean, we'll see where everything lands, on this. There's GLP-1 and then there's GIP, and both of these are secretagogue hormones that are designed to. But the more the mechanisms are understood, yes, they started out to treat diabetes, right? Type 2 diabetes, and then was found out these patients are losing weight, and then they find out, well, it's not just lowering glucose from the pancreas, it's actually shutting down deposition of fat in adipose tissues, and there are receptors in the brain that says quit eating. And there are other receptors in the brain for the GLP-1 drugs that treat addictive behaviors. And sometimes overeating can be an addictive behavior. So it'll be kind of interesting to see if these wonder drugs of the GLP-1 class are able to really increase. Now, great, you may not call that wellness. This is a pharmaceutical aid to wellness, but it's designed to get our people in our Western society trimmer, more fit, less obese, less subject to diseases. So that was one area I thought about. The other one is what they call um, these are called sodium glucose transporter inhibitors, and so this is a transporter. All cells tend to have them, and drugs like Jardiance block this transporter. And what it does is it keeps the mitochondria healthy. And if you know what a mitochondria is, I mean, these are these little energy powerhouses inside the cells that generate energy in the form of ATP. And these mitochondria, if they need to be healthy, and when they're not healthy, disease can take, including cancer, because the mitochondria, their membranes go haywire, they depolarize, they release reactive oxygen species, they damage DNA, they mutate it, and you've got the etiology of many diseases. But these SGLTs, sodium glucose transporter inhibitors, actually maintain healthy mitochondria. And if a mitochondria is damaged, it signals it for removal. Um, and there's a Dr. James O'Keefe that's right over here in Kansas City at the St. Luke's Hospital, who has been doing research in this area, and he's finding this to be preventive of a number of diseases, and maybe even increasing lifespan in general.
I want to touch on the GLP-1s real quick. So, like, I would watch the seminar like a month and a half ago, and it was with a doctor at St. Luke's in like their exercise and diabetes prevention, and she was talking about how the research that they discovered is that is your muscle mass is starting to decline
Yeah.
for individuals that don't need the GLP-1s, but you're using it for weight loss. So everything that seems good on the surface isn't good, like deep down.
Yeah.
When
Yeah, there's nothing's ever 100%
yeah,
good. So I think the GLP-1 story, as I understand it, the selective GLP-1s are what's causing them muscle wasting more than the GLP-1s that also block the GIP receptor. Those are sparing muscle, I think, more than the very selective GLP-1s. And there's another secretagogue class that's being developed called these are amyloid receptor drugs. Don't confuse that with amyloid in the brain and Alzheimer's. It's not the same amyloid. That's another treatment for obesity that is, remains to be seen. But there are different mechanistic approaches here. And I think what we're finding is maybe the selective GLP-1s opened up research globally for a number of these other strategies. And so we'll see, over time, we'll see which one's better.
So I want to just close it out. What is a message you would like to share with our audience regarding the importance of the ongoing research and investment in understanding the fundamental causes of cancer and exploring preventative measures?
Yeah, this is going to take research. And, um, and I don't want to politicize any of this, but, the National Institutes of Health needs funding. And many of these discoveries take place initially in academia. And, if the federal funding is cut off in academic institutions where pioneering researchers are uncovering new treatments, new preventing treatments, um, um, it's only going to hurt our society. So I don't know. I'm not responsible for being able to articulate how we move forward there.
No, I get
But it is an area to be concerned about. Um, there's another area, gene editing is another area. It's controversial because for some people says, I don't think you should be playing with people's genes. I don't think you should be, playing God and manipulating somebody's gene set. On the other hand, if you have at birth it's called a germline mutation. If you have it from birth, a mutation, and like the BRCA mutation in breast cancer or ovarian cancer, if you have that BRCA mutation at birth, you are really suspect and have a much higher incidence of breast or ovarian cancer by the time you reach, say, your 20s. And what you could do, and the technology exists to say, you go in, you say, hey, we sampled the amniotic fluid in the sac, and we found that your daughter, your fetal daughter has a BRCA1 mutation. You could actually go in there then, edit out that mutation, and replace it with the normal thing. And remove that liability for somebody to deal with later. So gene editing is another area I think to follow because, with gene editing, and that takes various forms of technologies, but what you really do is you're saying there's a bad gene, I'm going to remove it and replace it with the normal gene. I think we'll see, it's going to have to be highly regulated, but we will see very important, useful outcomes from that in the future. And I just mentioned the BRCA1 because a lot of people understand that one.
And like even just like the gene editing, like that, to me, I see it as like preventative measures.
It
like
is. That's totally. Kyle, that really, I wanted to mention it because I think that falls under your utopic goal of prevention. If you can actually edit out the bad gene and replace it with the wild type normal gene, then you basically have got prevention. Yeah.
And then like even one thing you stated was like how the blood test, like that should be part of when you go to the doctor for your whatever is yearly 6 month checkup, whatever the case be. When they do the blood work, that should be included in it. It's the point of like the yearly checkups to make sure that you are in health in good shape. So why aren't we including this extra test in all of that blood work?
Yeah. And there again, we're down to very complex interfaces involving regulatory agencies, insurance payer policy, company payer policies, and technology. All of these things are chess pieces on the table.
Yeah, it's a system that's I won't say broken, but it definitely needs reform.
Yeah, and in that sense too, there are some countries in Europe that I think are making more progress than the United States is. Um, but Yeah, I mean, for me, the one thing that I would certainly lobby for is the insurance companies would pay for some of these preventive measures, like taking a blood test for the ctDNA test to see if you have any sort of a lurking uh, DNA mutation that cause a cancer. I mean, um, that that gets very close to, I think, to the heart of what you're wanting to see in terms of prevention.
Really does. Well, I just want to say thank you, Dr. Flynn, for joining us today on this segment of Health Huddle, where we just talk deeper into cancer prevention, but more so from the pharmaceutical side, and just how you not only educated me, but I hope the viewers as well, you are
Yeah,
educated as well.
I hope this was helpful.
It was. Thank you so much.